creature.
Tickle. What's the front on, bitch?
Did you grow up with the NES, PlayStation, Star Wars, cartoons, and 80s TV? Do you like to think who would win in a fight between Batman and the Master Chief? Comics, games, movies, music, and TV. They're gonna tell you everything you need. Superheroes or not, they got your back. They're gonna save the world of geeks. Comics, games, movies, music, and TV. They're gonna tell you everything you need. Superheroes or not, they got your back. They're gonna save the world of geeks. This Week in Geek. This Week in Geek.
Hey guys, what's going on? Happy New Year 2020. Though I think this comes out on, is this New Year's Day or is this New Year's Eve? I don't know.
If I don't forget and I actually don't fall asleep, this will be edited and up 7 a.m. Eastern time, New Year's Day.
Awesome. So hopefully you had a fantastic new year and you woke up next to somebody you love or somebody interesting at the very least. So yes, we are here to celebrate the new year, to talk about what happened in the last decade in the world of geek, mostly gaming, but we're going to talk about some other things as well. As you can guess, I'm joined with my ever lovable and infallible co-host,
Alex, who has made a lot of editing work for our friend Steve over at the GCR. For the last two sessions we recorded, it involved Barbie getting stuffed from all angles. I'll say that much.
Yeah, it was a rather interesting conversation, but you'll hear that in probably like a week or two over on GCRN. So keep your eyes open for when we syndicate that, or just go over to geekcastradio.com for that as well. So yeah, we're going to talk a lot about the games that we played over the last decade that really impressed us. These are the ones that are not necessarily the best, but ones that made an impression with us in some way, shape, or form. We're also going to talk about some of our most disappointing games, some that have surprised us. And then we're also going to talk about some fandoms and other things that kind of made an impact this last decade. You can probably guess where we're going to go with that one. But I guess let's kind of start things right out of the gate here. And here are my picks for the top 10 games of the decade in no particular order. So starting things off, we're going to talk about The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. This game made a huge impact with me. One of the only games I've gotten all the achievements for on multiple editions of the game. This game absorbed me for thousands of hours. The joke around our household as Blair's become a Skyrim widow, as I journeyed off to the lands of Tamriel, and it's one of the best role-playing games I've ever played. A story I've often told with this game is when I got the game back in 2011, I got it early from Bethesda, and this was when I was just starting my relationship with them, and I got it a few weeks early, which is unusual to get a game weeks early. Usually you get it like a week, maybe two.
Yeah, like if there's a rare occasion where I've said to you, hey, so-and-so just gave me, especially like Sega, they gave me a couple games where they're like, here, it's a month early, and you're like, a month? And it is a rarity to get something that far before release.
Yeah, like I had this like a month in advance. So anyway, I remember I'm sitting down one Thursday night and I pop it into my Xbox 360. And normally I hate fantasy. I watched Lord of the Rings and I thought it was okay. I like D&D, but I hadn't played in years at this point. And I was like, okay, fine. Let's see what this is about. And before I knew it, it was like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I started playing it like 8 at night. I was like, okay, maybe I should go to bed. And I just fell in love with this franchise and this game world in a way I'd never seen before. And it was just utterly astounding. And then the DLC came out of Dawn Guard, Hearthstone, and I'm trying to remember what the other one was. Fuck, it doesn't matter.
Dragonborn?
Yeah, Dragonborn. And
I know that, and I've never even played this game.
Yeah, and it shows you like how much it just kind of became into the gamer culture. I mean, there were memes for years about, I used to be an adventurer like you, that I took an arrow to the knee and all that shit. And Fusro Da.
Yeah. Now, but just to chime in slightly, for somebody who hasn't played it, this became sort of the entry point for a lot of those, quote unquote dude bros, people that usually only played Madden or the occasional Call of Duty game. This was like a lot of people's entry into like real role-playing gaming. I think that its biggest legacy is going to be that it was like many people's first RPG.
Yeah, and it was very open in that regard that you could do anything. The game world is endless. Plus the fact it's a Bethesda game, which meant it was endlessly moddable, especially when they brought this to next generation consoles in like 2016. I want to say we got Skyrim remastered, and you could download mods for it on a console. That was unheard of. The only other game that had done that before that was Fallout 4, which I'll talk about a little bit later on in my list. So why don't you go next, Alex?
Well, if I have to say like any comments on Skyrim, I have tried the Elder Scrolls games. They're just, I am like the big RPG gamer, like as far as JRPGs and other traditional ones. They just, for some reason, haven't pulled me in. I get the feeling that if it comes out on like the PS5, because they're probably going to do something like that, like a brand new 4K texture modded one, I might give it a go again, like maybe really give it the old college try. But it was never really my thing. Yet everybody I know loved it, so I can't knock it, because it's like it's one of those. It's just not for me. That being said, you want to hear a little funny tidbit for it? I remember when you ended up getting it for the Switch. Was when you were in the hospital after your amputation. And I remember the reason that made me think of this is when you said your wife said she was a Skyrim widow. When you asked for it, she's like, "I'm torn." She goes, "I almost lost him like last week, and I'm going to lose him again for sure if I get him this game." And then she's like, "Well, I'd rather lose him digitally than physically." So that's when she picked it up for you. So that's. I can see like it's a game that's tied to your core as a gamer and as somebody who's now into fantasy because of that and Game of Thrones, right? Because they came out around the same time. So
yeah,
that now I have on my list. Now we're going to have some crossover and overlapping, I'm assuming, but again, this is in no particular order. I have Mass Effect 2 on here.
As do I.
Yeah, so that's one we can both cross off. I think Mass Effect 1 just barely is a year or so behind making this list, right? But other than
2008, I want to say. Maybe.
So we can, if we want to include Mass Effect 1, we can say the trilogy on PS3, because that's the first time that game was released on that platform. But Mass Effect 2 changed the way I experienced American storytelling in games. Well, I mean, technically Canadian, I guess, but prior to this, I had thought that American and Western RPGs lack storytelling. That's partially my naivete, not being a D&D gamer years ago and everything. I just thought that everything American had to be this open world thing where there's no story unless you find it for yourself, similar to how Skyrim works. That was the first game where I was like, wait, they can tell a narrative just like a JRPG does and do it with better nuance because they're native English speakers. Holy shit. And that became my obsession when I bought a 360 when I was working at Future Shop specifically to play the game when it launched. And I bought it, and then I bought... I did not play Mass Effect 1 initially because I forget why. I think it was... Oh, no, I had it on PC. Somebody gave it to me, and it was sluggish and slow and crappy. I had problems with it. So I never really played the first game until the trilogy came out on the PS3. But I did play number 2 and played the shit out of it. Like 2 full playthroughs, Renegade Paragon. The whole idea of multiple endings was still fairly new at that time, and having a full branching storyline. And it really, really sucked me into the Western RPG world.
My experience with Mass Effect starts with the swine flu. Mass Effect 2 specifically, I didn't really play the first one that much. I played it for like a few hours and I didn't much care for it, but Mass Effect 2 came to me at a very odd time in my life. I had just come back from Dallas from visiting the Game Heroes, and I caught swine flu while I was down there, and my school nurse from grad school had sent me home and put me into quarantine. She's like, yeah, don't come back for 3 weeks. So I'm like, oh, okay. So that sucked. So in these 3 weeks, I had bought myself another Xbox 360, and I was living in my room at my apartment with my roommates, and I had a lot of alone time. So I'm playing through Mass Effect 2, and I had known about Commander Shepard, but I really didn't know Commander Shepard. So I'm playing through this game and I am sucked right in. And then I did an interview with the game's director, Casey Hudson, about it. And I got more and more excited because I went into that interview kind of blindly. I knew some things about Mass Effect, but not a whole hell of a lot. But he got me more and more excited about it. So playing through Mass Effect 2, I had done the suicide mission and I'd made some mistakes, but I went back to an earlier save and somehow I managed to get everybody alive through that. I mean, everybody was loyal to me as much as they could be. And I was just astounded. So I went back and played the game a few more times through. And eventually I had everybody at max loyalty. I had max Paragon. I didn't do a Renegade playthrough till years later, because I didn't want to hurt the NPC's feelings. But I went out of... Sorry.
Thinking about it, I lost Jack on my first playthrough, and I was like, wait, you can lose people? Like, I didn't know. And then I was like...
Yeah.
So I was just lucky enough that for the most part, I had done everything so well that I did all the loyalty missions. Well, I guess I had made 1 or 2 poor choices when talking to Jack and lost Jack. And I was like, wait, oh, that person died. That sucks. And then I found out, wait, you could lose everybody? That was so new to me. And it's one of the first games where I put maybe 200 hours in doing 2 full playthroughs.
The first person I lost was Legion, it was a loyalty mission when you're on board the Normandy and Tally and Legion are arguing, and you can only get 1 loyalty unless you have max Paragon or max Renegade to talk them out of being douchebags. But yeah, I played that game so much. I actually got the black hole gun from GameStop for it. And I went through hell and back to get that onto my main account. And yeah, it was a magical time. It's what made me fall in love with Jennifer Hale as Fem Shep. Because I didn't do a male Commander Shepard playthrough until after Mass Effect 3.
And little would you know, eventually you'd get to know Mark Meer fairly well, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Little did I know I'd become actual friends with Commander Shepard. Like, yes. That's
and
weird.
Even in the last couple of years when you haven't been able to make it out to as many events, and I've gone in your stead, and Mark Meer has been there, one of the first things he says is, how's Mike doing? So he remembers. He's good people, and we wouldn't have had that connection. I wouldn't have even known who he was had it not been through Mass Effect.
So yeah, the next game on our list is a fairly recent addition, at least this one for me. Last year, there was a PlayStation sale during the summer, and I had a bit of a depressive episode. I mean, I was still doing TWIG shows with Alex, but I was looking for something to entertain me. I wanted something different. And there was this PlayStation sale, and I saw Persona 5. And I'd heard a lot about it, but I didn't know what it was about. Because I had Persona 4 Golden on my Vita, but I hadn't really played it. And I had the Persona 4 fighting game. Again, it was just a fighting game that had weird characters, and I liked it because I was good at it. But Persona 5, I had Alex, okay, tell me the elevator pitch for it. And you didn't do a great job about it, but you told me one of your best friends is a kitty cat who turns into a car.
See, the problem
so
was
I'm thinking,
it's a game that I had purchased, and I'm still only about 10% through because I was always pushing it off because I'm like, I like it so much, I don't want to. It was a weird thing. I didn't want to have the experience be over too quickly, and then I waited so long that they eventually announced a better version coming out. But the thing was, my elevator pitch was like, how do I do this? I'm like, it's a JRPG, it's Final Fantasy mixed with dating sim, and your one of your companions is a cat that you can turn into a car.
Yeah, so I'm like, all right, why not? Sure. And then Alex and I did some techno wizardry to make the experience a lot more fun. Basically, I didn't have to grind that game. I could just play the story on stupid easy and still have fun. I felt powerful, and I got invested in the characters. And over the course of well over 100 hours, I felt things in that game, like genuine emotion.
Consider the money you put in. Like, you know how I'm sometimes can be a little grumbly when I'm like, hey, did I get my money's worth out of it? It's because of games like that. Where
yeah, like
you can
this
spend
one.
$60 and get 100 hours. Sorry, excuse me, I got the hiccups.
Yeah, so spending that $25 on it grand total, I was utterly astounded how much I loved the world. And I'm going to do another playthrough when Persona 5 Royal comes out in March. And the first time I romanced On, because she was the hot blonde model girl. This time I'm totally going Futaba this time, because Futaba is bae.
Well, and that's one of the things too. This is one of those games in that entire franchise where you can, have multiple places with distinct multiple endings, and think about that. You basically got, like, for $25, you got hundreds of hours of play that you probably would never have expected you were going to get.
Yeah, like, I got a full emotional experience that I haven't experienced probably since The Last of Us.
I just remember Blair, your wife, sending me a message saying, "What have you done to my husband?" And I went, "What?" She's like, "He won't stop playing it." She goes, "I haven't been this annoyed since all he did was watch Star Trek Voyager." Da da da, da da da. I hate that theme song. She screamed at me.
Yeah, she used to call it "Quit playing Shiho," because there's a plot point where one of your friends tries to commit suicide named Shiho, and she's like, "Fuck Shiho, I hate her." Yeah, so it was. And now she's yelling in the other room about She-Ho-Ho. So anyway, yeah, Persona 5 is definitely one of my picks for the last decade. What's your next one?
I may as well slide right in with Persona 4 Golden. Yes, technically Persona 4 came out under the radar in like the twilight last year of the PS2. That being said, very few people played it, obviously. It sold well enough and got praise. But then it sort of, went out with a whimper when the system went out. And then we started hearing that it was getting remastered and it was going to be coming out on the Vita. And it became the Vita's killer app. It's actually one of the few titles that came out that sold the Vita. I bought my Vita to play it. And, like, at a time when the Vita was selling, like, 20,000 units a month, that month it came out, it sold 1 million units. And it sold 1 million copies in North America, like, first month, which is unheard of for that platform, let alone an RPG, just based on word of mouth of how good of not only of a port it was, but just how it was like a full reimagining of the game, from the ground up, with better graphics, better storylines, more characters, better tweaked gameplay, more like side stories and stuff to do in it, a special complete ending, so on. It's what got me hooked on the series, because previously the Shin Megami Tensei games are dirt hard. Like, the traditional games in the franchise are much more difficult. One hit kills can kill the whole party. Just very archaic, more almost depressing in their design, but it's purposeful because it's about basically the battle between heaven and hell. The Persona series was always sort of the offshoot to be a little more traditional. It was originally a tactical RPG, series on the PS1, which I didn't play because I wasn't into TRPGs at the time. And then, by the time the third and fourth game had come out, I didn't have a PS2 anymore. I'd already moved on to PS3. So getting, this is what got me into the franchise. And it's what made me go, hey, we've got to get the fifth game when it comes out, and so on and so forth. It's basically revitalized Atlas and Sega in the West. Because there was a while where Sega was doing really poorly. And this was one of the few shining titles that, brought about sort of a renaissance in localization of JRPGs. We probably would not have had the Yakuza series come over here had this game not been popular. And it's everything that's like, it's not as good as Persona 5 as a whole, but it's sort of laid the groundwork. We would not have had Persona 5 be as successful here if this had not come out. So I'll sort of tie those two together. And it's the one shining example of what a portable Sony title could be. And we'll probably never see anything like it again.
Yeah, absolutely. So our next pick, this one also emotionally devastated me, had me emotionally invested. I've done 15 playthroughs since the game's release back in 2013. This was released as one of the PlayStation 3's killer apps towards the end of its life cycle, and definitely was a great remaster when released on the PlayStation 4, and that is Naughty Dog's The Last of Us. Wow. How to unpack this game. Ellie and Joel, their trip across America to basically find a cure for the cordyceps virus, which is turning people into these plant zombies across a devastated America and world at large. Great performances in this game. Like, wow.
It has by far the most dramatic and disturbing intro to a video game ever.
Yeah, like that game doesn't pump the brakes very often. There are some moments of levity, but it's emotional. Like, it will get to you. Like, there are three moments that really get to me. There's the one in the beginning where your daughter dies, and you're like,
spoilers.
Holy shit, you've had 5 years, or whatever. Second moment is when a group of people you're traveling with, one of them gets infected, and the night before you're having dinner with them and you're talking and joking, and this kid named Sam gets infected with the virus, and his brother has to shoot him, and you try to apologize, and the guys just go, or I'll kill you. And finally, you're wandering through the sewer, and you come across a makeshift camp where people were hiding from the zombies. And it's a playground, or like a nursery. And you see toys, and you see like a lesson plan on a board, and you know that people lived here once. And you find a note, and it says they did not suffer. And that leaves so much to the imagination.
Yeah.
That's dark. And that just, I remember pausing the game and just kind of taking a breath back and just thinking, Jesus Christ, this is a video game. That's fucking heavy.
Definitely. I couldn't bring myself. My brother kept saying, play it. I'm like, dude, I can't, because I know my heart will race too much playing a game like that. So I ended up watching him do a playthrough, and I'm like, dude, he goes, oh, it's okay, I like doing this. And I sat there and I was like, oh God, at the edge of my seat the whole time.
Oh yeah, like that's another game. I've done 15 playthroughs, and I approach it like this whenever I play. Don't use much gun ammo if I can. Mostly stealth kills if I can. And save all my ammo for the last battle. Only use as few shots as possible. I'm pretty sure I could beat that game on its hardest difficulty right now, but I've never have. I always played on normal because it's more fun this way. But there's just so many great performances in that game. I can't remember the guys who play Joel and Ellie, but they are unparalleled in their performance, and that's definitely one of the best games of the decade, if not my pick for game of the decade. So your turn.
Let me see here. I've got a few I can go through. A lot of mine are role playing games. It's not just that I only play role playing games. I just find that a lot of times they are what push the medium forward a lot. Because there's only so many times you can have, a Mario game be a Mario game sort of thing. So let me see here. I can sort of pair two together in that they sort of represent the best of the traditional like JRPG, and that would be Legend of Heroes: Trails of Cold Steel and Dragon Quest XI. They're wildly different in visual style of what they are, but they are like that core. Like if you think like what would if in 1995 you thought what's an RPG going to be like in 20 years, or this is sort of what you would have pictured. It's like the logical evolution of the Super Nintendo RPGs is what they are, but yet they have good storylines, great character dialogue. They add in a bazillion mini games. It's basically like, what if you took everything that was great about a Super Nintendo RPG and then happened to put it on modern consoles? So those are just sort of my feel good, get 100 hours of play out of it, and just, I've had a hard day, I'm going to veg out and play some RPGs. That's the kind of games I like to play. So those two are just sort of honorable mentions thrown in there. So I know you haven't played either, but you can get the idea. If you like Final Fantasy III on the Super Nintendo, that's sort of the idea. But I would say something that was much more innovative for its time, as far as as much as Mass Effect did for the hard sci-fi genre of Western RPGs, I would say Dragon Age did the same for the revitalizing the fantasy aspect. Now, Dragon Age 1, came out just before the decade, that we're including here, so that we can't count that. But Dragon Age Inquisition, which I really liked. I know you for some reason didn't really get into it. Maybe it's just it started to age a little beyond what you would like in an RPG. But the storyline was second to none.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really like you're probably going to get into Dragon Age 4 Direwolf when that comes out. Or Dreadwolf.
I'll try it.
Dreadwolf Rises, because it's going to have. Well, each game has had a dramatically different interface in the way it plays, and I fully imagine the new game will be much more console optimized than previous ones. This was a console optimized version, but just for whatever reason, it just didn't click with you. I noticed.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, everything that you liked about Mass Effect, the actual story way of storylines, the character interactions, the multiple endings, it was basically take that and put it into a fantasy setting. So I can understand why you might not have liked some of the combat, but there's a Freddie Prinze Jr. plays a bisexual giant mythological bull creature that you can have sex with. So what does that say?
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you were somebody who was into fantasy RPGs or somebody who was into sci-fi RPGs, BioWare was killing it at the beginning of the decade.
Moving on to my next pick. This one shouldn't come as any real surprise to you, or at least to our listeners. Insomniac's Spider-Man. Holy shit.
I had that on mine here as well, so I'll cross that off my list.
This one totally took me by surprise because I thought the trailer looked cool, but it didn't really wow me. But I was like, all right, fine. It's a Spider-Man game. Activision had held the license for years. And I just assumed it was going to be like another Beanox or Timegate or whoever the hell developed its Spider-Man game. And the last Spider-Man game I played and enjoyed was the movie tie-in for The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I don't know why, but I really, really enjoyed that one. So played Spider-Man and just it immediately clicked. Everything you wanted wanted in a Spider-Man game, you got. It was funny. It actually had a real heart to it. The guy who played Spider-Man, Yuri Lowenthal, was like an Ubisoft actor who was, I know him mostly for the Prince of Persia games and a bunch of other kind of budgety-esque titles. Really did an amazing job with this game. And then the rest of the cast was fantastically rounded out. But you got a solid Spider-Man game with great side missions. Some of them were a little bit of busy work, but it was still fun to do. This game, without trying, I got the platinum. I was
wow.
How the hell did I do that?
You know what? If you took out the game was perfect if you took out
those speedball missions.
Yes, where you have to blow up the stupid drones.
Yeah,
or the drones, or the get here before the time explodes.
Although the good thing about those, if you wanted the platinum, you only had to get silver, not gold.
Which again is good, but like those were the only parts that felt like busy work. But that was an after effect. It wasn't necessary to get the story.
Yeah, exactly. The DLC, The City That Never Sleeps, was kind of weak, all things considered. I mean, you did fight some more villains, but the bad guy being Hammerhead was kind of lame, but whatever. But no, Spider-Man was a fantastically solid game. The sequel's coming out sooner than we think. My guess is next year.
You think they want that to be a launch title?
If they, within the launch window, is what I'm going to say.
Or
within 6 to 8.
Or do you think they're going to do like Spider-Man remastered as a launch title, and then you wait 6 months and the new one comes out?
I'm going to say we'll get a remastered for sure, and you'll probably get Spider-Man 2 fall 2021.
Or do they do like a thing where if you pre-order the new Spider-Man, you'll get a download code for the original?
Maybe.
That seems to be a more popular thing that companies are doing now. To like, didn't Call of Duty do that, where you got a remastered version of was it Modern Warfare or something a little while ago?
Yeah, when you bought Infinite Warfare, you got Modern Warfare remastered.
Yeah.
So next pick for you?
I'm gonna go with Final Fantasy 15. It's one that I initially thought I wasn't gonna like, based on I'm like, oh, they changed the battle system too much, and then it turns out, all things said and done, I looked at my playtime. I'm like, wait, I have 100 hours in this, so they must have done something right. And what I think they did, the critical error that Square made when putting out the game initially was they did the cardinal sin of requiring that you see other media to get the whole story. So to get the whole story, you have to watch the prequel movie, The Kingsglaive, which ends up being, it's a great movie, but like when the game first came out, if you didn't watch that movie, you got sort of thrown in, and the plot sort of came at you sort of haphazard like, and then some of the other aspects were fleshed out with the DLC. But you had to wait like a year to get all the DLC, right? Well, nowadays, if you go and buy the I think, what do they call it, the King Edition or something like that, it's basically the all-inclusive edition. It has every piece of DLC built in, and a lot of times stores will bundle it with a copy of the movie. So it's like, before you play the game, just pop in this 1 hour movie, watch some of the best CGI animation you're ever going to see in your life, and then play the game, and you're like, oh, the game is a full experience when you do it that way, and that's probably the best way to experience it. Gameplay wise, it's one of the smoothest playing games considering how high the fidelity of the graphics are. And some people are like, it's driving simulator, the RPG. Yes and no. Some of the best parts of the game are just listening to people talk back and forth while you chillax for 5 minutes as you drive between areas. And it was a way of covering, the massive load times you would have had because of how large the game is. Like, it's very large open spaces. But the story that it tries to tell is very different and unique. It's this sort of proto, like, some of the parts of the world seem like a fantasy world, but then some parts of the world seem like modern day, like they're driving a Lexus sort of thing. Like, there's computers, but then there's also magic. So it's sort of the kind of stuff that I think you dig when like you like the Shadowrun type thing, right? Where it's like there's fantasy and technological mixed together, and that's the first time they've really sort of done that. They've done like there's been Final Fantasy VII that had steampunk basically, right? Like or they've had
Techno fantasy.
Yeah, this was the closest to that style they've done in years. And then it had super high fidelity graphics. And it's one of those games where the longer you play it, and the little nuances like going to when you want to recover your magic or level up and upgrade stuff, you go to camp and you cook a dinner, and like how detailed the food is and the little dialogue. There's hundreds of hours of like voice dialogue in this game that you might not see unless you play it 2 or 3 times. Like I can only imagine the budget they must have had for the voice actors, because it's one of those games where what you did in the last 2 or 3 hours while you played before you go to that campfire scene will dictate the sorts of things they say and do. So you might not trigger certain events ever in your playthrough, and then you have to play through 2 or 3 times to see it. And it's not like you're going to purposely trying to do things to trigger that. It just will naturally progress and happen as it goes. So every time you play will be a slightly different experience, leading to the end, which has, you know, one of the most emotional, dramatic roller coaster events of an ending I've ever seen in the game. And it finished, and I was like, I started the game being, you know, like hesitant as to what it was going to be like, and at the end, the game ends, and I'm like, why am I crying? It was one of those experiences, and I'm wondering how they're going to handle the Final Fantasy VII remake, because it looks very different than this. I was worried that it was just going to be a cookie cutter. Hey, let's plop Final Fantasy VII into this engine, and it doesn't appear to be that way. So, kudos to Square for basically every 3 to 4 years, energizing and changing the game up.
The next game, this one probably will be controversial in some capacity. But Fallout 4. So this is a game I don't know why I was excited for. Now, I'd played Fallout 3, I'd played Fallout New Vegas, but not enough to get invested. I played for a few hours each, and they were okay, I guess, fine, whatever. They didn't suck me in. But I used to be a big collector of collector's editions of games. Not so much anymore. I might buy the odd one now. But I went on a mission to find Fallout 4's Pip-Boy. But Bethesda had sent me the code, again, super friggin' early for Fallout 4. And I didn't know what to expect. I'd seen the trailer at E3 thinking, oh, well, this looks kind of neat. And I got sucked in. And you obviously play as the lone survivor or the lone wanderer. I can't remember what you're called. But you're looking for your son, Sean. And what you get is you wandering across the I can't remember. It's not the Capital Wasteland, which is DC. Basically between Boston and parts of Maine, you're wandering around looking for these things. There's like the Brotherhood of Steel show. It happens like 100 years after the bombs fall in the Fallout universe. And there's like so many different game modes. There's like a tower defense thing kind of built in where you can build up your own settlement and defend it from raiders or mutants, which some of my bases are come near me and it's good luck because I will rain hell on you. And it's so much fun to watch those happen. And then all the DLC came out for Far Harbor, which is fantastic. There was Nuka World, Robotron or something, where the roboticist comes back. I can't remember what the hell it was called.
I don't know what it's called, but I remember it being pretty big.
Yeah, and that was when we could have robot companions, and our friend Dee had her character of Dr. Stab. And that got me thinking, how stupid can I make something? And stupid did I get. But yeah, I had so much fun. Plus, because the game is fully voiced, you could come into some ridiculous moments. I mean, if you remember last year on the show, we covered the Fallout cookbook, and
Yep.
I would take clips out of Fallout 4, like, I got an order for 2 pepperoni and cheese. The name is Fuck You, and just ridiculous moments like that. Or, well, technically the brain was ruined when I got here, after you shoot someone in the face, and the doctor's like, I can't work with a brain that's been destroyed. And you're like, well, I found it like this. And it was funny, and the music was great. And then they allowed mods on consoles, and I modded the shit out of my game. And it was just so much fun. Like, I can't explain how much fun it was. And Fallout 4 got me into a whole new franchise. Now, fuck Fallout 76.
Look, the days when they could actually make a game that was somewhat cohesive.
Yeah, back when the engine was stable.
Don't say that.
Ish.
Back when the game was playable is probably the best way to put it.
And yet another game of Bethesda's where I got every single achievement. Another platinum. I was so happy about it. So, yeah, Fallout 4 is my pick here.
Cool. Let me see here. I'm going to gush a little bit about Deus Ex Human Revolution. So I was not somebody familiar with the Deus Ex franchise. I knew they existed, the previous 2 games, but I had not played them as, I don't know, something about the first Deus Ex seemed a little janky to me. I guess it was the whole first-person games were still very new when the first one came out. And the second one, wasn't it like a console exclusive or something?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I probably never got around to playing it initially. But then... was it Eidos Montreal, I think, designed it for Square. Went back when Square was like, hey, we need to have a Western RPG franchise to compete against BioWare, basically. That's what they were doing. And they made a hell of a game. In its initial run, there were like a few tweaks here and there to upgrade the game post-launch to make it a little more traditional RPG where you could actually avoid combat altogether. But how it went was you were a security, basically the head of security for a company right at the cusp of the human augmentation revolution, when we would start to be able to enhance people to, like, it's like, oh, you're missing a leg. Well, we'll give you a bionic leg. Oh, you're in the military and we need you to be able to see at night. Well, we'll give you, an optic nerve implant that'll let you see at night. Well, during like a routine inspection, you're basically raided by like a military group. You get horribly disfigured. Your ex-girlfriend gets kidnapped, who's one of the lead scientists, and you wake up after having been operated on, and you're fully enhanced, and you slowly unlock parts of your body as you heal. So it's a good way to. It's similar to like Mass Effect. Was it Mass Effect 2 or 3 now that had where Shep basically has a body reset?
Number 2.
Yeah. So it's that sort of dealio, which is a good way of explaining, why, you don't have all your powers immediately. The idea is you're still fairly sore from and recovering from the operations because you almost died. And then there's weird, like pseudo-Christian overtones to it, like, or even like mythological overtones. Like when you're being operated on, you hallucinate and picture the doctors as being plague doctors working on you, and then your Icarus flying too close to the sun, burning your wings, and all that sort of stuff. Very cool symbolism within the game. But you then proceed to sort of try to track down the missing scientists and investigate everything going on. And you can choose to run and gun if you want to, or you can hack every computer and everything in the area to gain information that will then let you go a different pathway, where it's like, oh, you don't want to, face that boss one-on-one and shoot them? Fine. You can find a way to sneak up and crawl up into the piping area, go down to another area, and gas the room and kill the boss without ever having to touch them. So, like, the idea of fully, like, non-combative gameplay was introduced in it. Like, I had not seen an RPG do that. even though I know that some had existed back in the PC era, like back in the 90s, the golden era of RPGs. Seeing something in the modern era do that and still have the classic dialogue trees and very similar to, it was basically like Square Enix was like, hey, we can do dialogue trees like BioWare can, and they actually did. It worked really well. And even the sequel game, Mankind Divided, was really good too. I'm really hoping that we see a third game in this trilogy come out, maybe for next gen.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, because they were really, both games are really well handled, and I like the game so much that it's the only time in history that I've written a handwritten letter and mailed it to the Montreal team to say I really, really enjoyed it, because I was having a downtime at the time. I was pretty depressed. I was having issues where like it was right around the time I was going back to school, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my life again. And it was one of those games that brought me out of a funk. And I wrote a letter to them, basically saying, I don't expect to hear back from you guys, but I just wanted to say you guys did a fantastic job. And, I really hope you keep up the good work. And then I did end up getting a letter back from the office saying, thank you, we appreciate it. We put it up on the wall with some of our other letters we received. I was like, cool. So, it's one of the games where if you haven't tried it but you're interested in a very, I guess, cyberpunk style game, before the cyberpunk game comes out this coming year, this is probably the closest we had to a cyberpunk game.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it sets up so much with its world. It gives you an interesting world to play in and a varied approach to combat. So it definitely accomplished what the designers envisioned, and memorable game from this generation. The next game we're going to pick is one of my faves, and this one came out originally in 2013 and on the Xbox 360, PS3, then got re-released on next-gen consoles, and is still getting new content coming out for it to this very day, and is still consistently in the top 10 of games sold today. That's Grand Theft Auto 5.
Wow, I forgot that it's that old now.
6 years.
And 6 years, and I've only seen people play it. I've tried it bits and pieces here. I just never owned it because it never came down in price enough for me.
It's $20 right now. It's totally worth it. Holy shit, is it worth it?
Oh no. Maybe Alex is gonna have to splooge on the Xbox One.
I was about to say I have it on Xbox One, and I'm willing to loan it to you. So
you have a physical copy?
I do.
Oh,
so the next time you come over,
yeah, I'll definitely give it a try because. I had thought maybe wait to the next gen, but I have a feeling that the next gen's going to just have a new game altogether.
Oh yeah, if sources are to be believed, there will be a Grand Theft Auto 6 released within launch window, and we'll see something at E3 this year.
That wouldn't surprise me because I mean there've been a lot of time put into this game, but with that length of time gone by, and for the last year or so they haven't had to worry about Red Dead, it would make sense if they've ramped up production.
Yeah. So Grand Theft Auto 5, what can I say about this? You get 3 playable protagonists in Michael, not Lamar. Shit, I can't think of the one guy's name now.
I'm sorry.
There's Michael, Trevor.
You didn't just pick like a name that you thought sounded like it would be him, did you?
No. Lamar's his buddy. Lamar's the guy who helps you.
So, Phil Lamar?
Shit, that's gonna. Yes. I think he's a voice in it actually too.
He's a great actor. But yeah, it's three characters. There's one that's like a traditional mobster or whatever, right? And then there's
Michael.
Then there's the crazy hillbilly dude.
Yeah, that's Trevor. I'm just looking up a name because that's gonna bother me.
I know I saw my brother play it and he loved it, and he's like, dude,
Franklin.
He's like, there's 3 characters, and no matter what, you're gonna love at least one of them.
Yeah, Trevor is my favorite, and he was the crossover success because now he's in The Walking Dead. He was in Breaking Bad, and when you hear him in Breaking Bad, you're like, that's fucking Trevor. But yeah, there's so many great moments, and it's so over-the-top ridiculous. If you play this game on PC, there's role-playing servers. It's so intense. The mod community is so weird for this. It's fun as hell. The game's storyline, it's intense, it's fun, it's still got that like satire. There are still secrets that are still being discovered to this very day. Like, it's an amazing game, and Rockstar has magic at their fingertips when they create games like Red Dead and when they do the Grand Theft Autos. Grand Theft Auto has always been more my thing. Red Dead's more story, but Grand Theft Auto 5 really stuck with me because it was a great crime story, and it's a great story of revenge and maybe making things right as much as you can and trying to get out of the shit that you're in to live your best life. And honestly, the friendship between Franklin, Trevor, and Michael, I really enjoyed. And playing the stock market in that game can be tremendously fun. And there's so many little, like there's golf, there's tennis, there's a shooting range, there's like a full casino in there now. There's horse racing, I think. It's fun. I need to go back to it at some point. And screwing around with a rocket launcher in downtown Los Santos is still fun. So I'm hoping when the next Grand Theft Auto comes out, I'd love to see a return of Tommy Vercetti from Vice City or Nico Bellic. But regardless, Michael, Franklin, Trevor, memorable characters, love it. And Grand Theft Auto is a fantastic game. So that's my pick.
Okay, I've only got a couple left here. I think this one might be on both of our lists. I've got South Park: The Stick of Truth.
Yep, that's on mine.
And that you can also lump Fractured Butthole in it as well.
Yes.
Now, but I would say the biggest thing this is, yes, they are JRPG, tactical RPGs. It's not just what this does for the lore of the show, in that it's the first time they mapped out the actual world of the show, but it's what this did for the medium, pushing it forward, pushing the boundaries of what you could do in a narrative. Like if this had been released 10 years ago, these would have got like an adults only rating, but somehow those guys at South Park are wizards and were able to go, you know what, these are games for adults, but they pushed the line just enough where it's like, we're not quite getting an adult-only rating, even if there is a part of the game where you're fighting while your parents are having sex and you have to avoid your dad's balls as they slap into your mom.
I couldn't believe how much they got away with that game. I was like, oh my God.
Think about what I said there. That's not made up. That's an actual thing that's happening. You're avoiding, like, you're seeing your dad's shaft even as you're avoiding. It's so disturbing.
And then you're fighting aborted Nazi fetuses at one point.
And when you're done, to get a trophy and achievement, you have to beat the dead fetus till it explodes.
Yeah, in blood, cum, and everything else. And
like it's over the top, way beyond anything. And I loved every second of it. I wish there had been more of that first game, that there wasn't really any major DLC for it. But then the second game came out, and it's just as topical as ever. I almost think... I thought that personally, I thought the story and the jokes were better in the first game.
Yes.
But
the gameplay was better in the second.
The gameplay was a lot better in the second. If you could make a third game and merge the gameplay of the second game with the tight story of the first game, you'd have a better experience overall. But I still think the second game had some really, really funny moments. I mean, Captain Diabetes.
Yeah. Which I think I kept him on my team for most of the game.
Like, one of your summons is Classy, and she brings all the other hoes. Like, it's so beyond crass that it's something that you have to experience. And this is one of those titles where if you missed the first game and you pre-ordered the second game,
you got it for free.
They gave you a remastered copy of the first game for modern systems for free, which is like, they basically gave you 100 hours of South Park, like basically 2 seasons, because each game has about a season's worth of animation and dialogue in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically like the show, and you would never think a game could be treated as well as the IP, and Ubisoft.
Yeah, like the first game was Obsidian, and we knew that they knew how to make RPGs. We just didn't know if they would be able to make an RPG that merged itself with the franchise so well. And they did, because they had Trey basically overseeing every aspect of the creation. And then when they handed over to Ubisoft, we're like, can they do it? Because Ubisoft has never really made traditional JRPGs. Well, this proves they can. And it also means that now that they've got this engine down pat for the second game, it might be easier to make a third. It just depends on how much they want to devote. Like, because with Trey and Matt basically voicing everything, writing everything, and then designing a lot of the assets, it's like, how much time can they devote to it? I mean, it helps that South Park is now only 10 episode seasons. But like this, like I almost felt like there was more dialogue and more things happening in these games than in an entire season of a show.
I think there is. I think I remember some documentary on it saying they put a lot more into the games than they do a typical season.
And what it shows is they are super nerds, because they chose tactical JRPGs as their gameplay style. I mean, it works well for the kind of game they're doing, but like, think about this. There's incidental voices. Like, every character, depending on the party you're with, speaks different. Like, depending on the party you make up, right? Like, so if you have Cartman in your party when you're fighting with Butters, they'll have interactions that are different than if you had Butters with Kyle. You know what I mean? Like, so it almost encourages multiple playthroughs just to hear what different parties will sound like.
Yeah, like, and there's so many hidden discoverables. I know in the first game, I had to do. I played the original Stick of Truth probably about 5 or 6 times all the way through, and it took me like the first 2 or 3 to get all the Chin Pokemon, and then to get all the friends on Facebook, and it took me forever to find the Happy Tree creatures or whatever, where they're like, hail Satan.
The woodland critters. Like,
yeah, that took me forever to figure
the first
out.
game, if you didn't know, is basically Dragon Age mixed with Game of Thrones. The second game is them trying to create their own Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, what would a third game be? Like, I'm kind of wondering what path would they want to go down? Would it go down post-apocalyptic?
Maybe Mad Max style, yeah, maybe
like Mad Max mixed with this dystopian future,
or Walking Dead, maybe
something like that, maybe.
Yeah, so yeah, that's definitely a solid pick, and both games are worth checking out, and they are remarkably cheap for your choice of platform.
Just be aware for somebody who maybe has younger siblings, or if you have a spouse or parents that may be a little more prudish, these games are crass.
Yeah, they pull no punches, 0 punches. The next one, this one probably surprises people, but I think it deserves note because it was the last Hideo Kojima game with this franchise, because Metal Gear Solid Survive sucks. But I'm talking about Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain, which kind of tells the story of Big Boss before the founding of Outer Heaven, which is basically before Solid Snake becomes the lead hero of the franchise. And you kind of get where Big Boss is coming from in these games, and it's a fantastic ride from start to finish, although the game wasn't completely finished when it was released, so that's why some of the storyline doesn't make a whole shit ton of sense at times. But it's still a great playthrough when you're fighting the big Metal Gear in this game, when you're fighting the guy in the cowboy hat and the mask, just doing the different missions. And think of what you will of the character Quiet, the sniper who doesn't need to eat because she's a sexy lady and absorbs air and oxygen through her skin. It's Hideo Kojima, just go with it. And then she does the sexy dance. But no, it's a really cool game. Like, it's got amazing combat. It allows you to think outside the box. Again, the first fight you play against Quiet, like, it's a sniper battle, and you can choose to shoot bullets at her, to wound her, you can knock her out, Or if you're really smart, you can call in an airdrop and drop a box on her head and wipe out half her health in one shot. So it's thinking outside the box like that can really help you. And I just had an amazing time with this. Yet another game I've almost platinumed. Plus, there was a tower defense game you could play online where you could invade other people's bases. And there was a goal, or there was an achievement that everybody in the world could work towards. But it unlocked for some people, but not for everybody, where it was called total nuclear disarmament. And it would trigger a cutscene where the game would show all the nukes in the world have been disarmed. And it's really, really neat. And it was triggered by a glitch. Like, this achievement should never have been possible unless everybody in the world agreed to it. So that was really neat. And it was just a really cool dog. Plus, you got a puppy in the game, and I used to take the puppy with me on like every mission.
I only played the Ground Zeroes demo. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I really recommend Phantom Pain. It's weird. It's Kojima, so it's fucking weird, but it is worth playing through. It is so worth it.
Cool. I only have one more listed on mine. I'm sure you have a couple more too, or
one more. Just one more.
Okay, so I've got Super Mario Odyssey. Probably the first time we've had a major shakeup to the platform genre in very long time. Well, probably since Galaxy, which Galaxy was cool. It was basically made to show off the Wii, like the Wii controls, I guess. Mm-hmm. But Odyssey, I didn't think Mario could look so good ever. And such a large game, I was sucked in. I didn't think I would play like basically a week straight of a Mario game, but I did. There have been other good platform games come out recently, like the Kirby game, but it's kind of short and has, charming moments here and there. But as far as like a flagship title, it really shows that Nintendo can do no wrong when it comes to their mainline Mario series. There's not much more to say. The storyline is basically Mario. But as far as being every single world being very inventive and different and utilizing different aspects, the idea of throwing your hat and controlling other characters is mind-boggling. And at the same time, for a system that is not nearly as advanced or technologically sound as the other competition, this game, if you were to hold it up and somebody said, hey, look at Mario put out a game on the Xbox One, or Mario put a game on the PS4, people would have believed it. That's how good it looked.
Jeez. I always wanted to play Odyssey. I haven't been a huge fan of the 3D Mario games for quite some time.
This is the one that might get you into it. I do think we're probably due in the new year for another 2D style Mario, or 3.2.5D, like side-scrolling one. Mm-hmm. But this was one, like, it's probably never going to come down in price because it's Mario. But if you do get a chance to try it, it is worth it. It's especially New Donk City and some of the other like worlds that you travel to are fun and interesting. It's not hard by any means, but there are areas, like if you're going to do the final challenge, like to get the final moon, you're going to die a lot and probably not be able to do it. So it's one of those like easy to play, hard to master kind of games.
Mm-hmm. So my final pick for my game of the decade is a game that I've been waiting for since 2001. And a lot of us had talked about it. We'd always hoped it would happen. And we always wondered, Capcom, why don't you like money? I want to give you money. I want to give you a lot of money. And the Resident Evil franchise went through different alliterations. We had Resident Evil 4, which was a massive turning point for the franchise and was fantastic. People loved it. Resident Evil 5 was a thing. Don't go to Africa and shoot black people, and don't expect some pushback.
Is that the racism game?
That was the racism game. And then Resident Evil 6 was, what is this? And it was stupid.
Yeah, I don't remember that one even coming out. And then isn't 7 the one that people were confused? They thought it was just a VR game, but it's a game that has a VR mode.
Yeah, and then it turned out to be a Resident Evil game, which was really good. And then they tried vaguely to tie it to the Resident Evil lore, but it was good. It was a good game, but it isn't what we wanted. And so the franchise lied dormant for a while. There was even a Resident Evil team-based shooter. What the fuck?
Wait. Next you're going to tell me there's like a Resident Evil soccer game or something.
You know what? It wouldn't surprise me.
And you know you'd probably play it.
I'd play it, but I ain't buying it. And then we finally got a surprise trailer at the Game Awards 2018. We're like, what the fuck is this? It was Resident Evil 2 Remake. And all of us collectively, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, shit our pants. We're like, oh my God, because we'd waited so long and the game wasn't updated to modern settings. No, the game still took place in 1998. It was still Claire and Leon. Character models look fantastic. Yes, it wasn't Allison Court doing the voice of Claire, which sucks, but whatever. We got a whole new game that was faithful to the original, made Mr. X scary because he could follow you anywhere in that police station with very few exceptions. So you were always on your guard waiting for this lumbering hulk of a thing to come hunting you. Zombies were not just bullet sponges that you could take down willy-nilly. Every encounter had to be thought out and planned. It was scary. It was atmospheric. It was friggin' great. And it's probably in my top 5 of the decade because it accomplished so much and Capcom knew how to please us. And Resident Evil 3 Nemesis comes out in April of next year. I'm putting a pre-order down very, very shortly, and I'm excited for it. So unbelievably excited for it.
Cool. Like I've not been into it, but I watched you play, and I was like, well, I am too scared to play that, but I will watch somebody else play it and like be in awe because I couldn't believe what they were able to pull off with that graphical engine.
Yeah, it's definitely, we're seeing the last great hurrah of these consoles, knowing how the power's finally been harnessed of the graphic fidelity that can be accomplished. Now there are people taking this game on PC and modding the hell out of it, and I've seen some pretty ridiculous mods for Mr. X.
Thomas the Train.
Yeah, Thomas the Train.
For somebody who looks around the corner and all you hear is "toot toot," and you look and it's Thomas' face staring at you.
Another one that I saw, this one I thought was really creative, but somebody took the character model for Claire and put Ellie from The Last of Us on her. And it looked really, really good, which was kind of cool. So there's that. So those are my 10 games of the decade. Honorable mentions, though, and this is from the last couple of years and even recently. The BattleTech game from Harebrained Schemes came out last year, and it's been supported through DLC. There's Urban Warfare, Flashpoint, and I think the newest one is, I think it's called Heavy Metal or something. That game is fantastic. And if you love BattleTech, it takes place just after the Third Succession War and before the clan invasions of BattleTech. And it's wonderfully treating the property with such love and care. I'm utterly astounded by it. Mech Warrior 5 came back. We've had Mech Warrior online for a couple years, but Mech Warrior 5, developed by Piranha Games, just came out. I think that game's got some rough patches to work out, so hopefully we'll see it return to form sometime in the future. And finally, this game surprised me. It just came out in the last couple months, and it's coming out physical, but it's not worth what they're asking, but I think it's worth playing, is Terminator Resistance by Reef Entertainment. It's basically Call of Duty, but with the Terminator license slapped on top of it. And it tells a better story than Terminator Dark Fate. And that's saying a lot. It's fun. The voice acting isn't great. But if you can pick this game up for like $20 or deep sale on Steam, I think it's worth it. So yeah, those are just some random honorable mentions.
Yeah, if I had any honorable mentions, it would be the Yakuza franchise has made a pretty big resurgence as far as action adventure titles. Same goes for Life is Strange and Life is Strange 2 and Before the Storm. If you like traditional adventure titles, those are fun. And the Ni no Kuni series, especially the first one, being that it was Studio Ghibli that did all the animation for it, those are great titles. So there's plenty of other really good games, but those are probably ones where I wanted to highlight them, but they weren't necessarily like the biggest things in my mind of the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm. So to talk about disappointments, and then we'll move on to some other topics very, very briefly.
Yeah. Do you mind if I go first? Because mine's sort of,
yes.
We talked about it. Mine is cusp of the decade, where like it came out a week before the end of 09, but I'm going to count it because most people didn't play it until January of 2010, and that is Final Fantasy 13 was such an abysmal disappointment for something that I had built up, and most people had built up in their heads since. A lot of people didn't play Final Fantasy 12, so since Final Fantasy 10, because 11 was the MMO, and that doesn't count. But what should have been ushering in a new era of JRPGs ended up being a convoluted, horrifying corporate mess, and wasn't really rectified and fixed until Final Fantasy 15 came out, like a good 5, 6, 7 years later. Mm-hmm. So that's basically my little thing, and then I think the rest we probably are conjoined on as far as our disappointment in them.
Yeah, this one is going to piss people off, so I'll keep it brief.
Well, here I'll just say this: your opinion, everybody else's opinion is wrong. That's not going to get us any hate, is it?
No. I didn't like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Neither did I.
Maybe I didn't give it enough of a chance. Maybe I was in the wrong headspace to play it, but I didn't enjoy it.
I was very mad that I spent money on it.
I played it for a couple hours when I first got my Switch.
I played 5 minutes and hated it, and that was enough. Literally, that was enough for me to go, I don't ever want to play this.
Well, I think that's a little much, but I gave it a couple hours.
I watched a few YouTube videos afterwards, and I'm like, nope, I'm glad I didn't play this.
Yeah, it just didn't resonate with me. In fact, no 3D Zelda game has ever resonated with me, and that may be because I'm an old man. I'm almost 40 years old. Well, it just didn't click with me.
Yeah, and we can't count the new Link's Awakening because that is a 3D remake of a previous title that is really good in 2D. So, and that was fantastic. But as far as this game is concerned, I don't like any game where, first of all, I have to scavenge. So I hate Minecraft. I hate any game where I'm having to pick up all of my stuff to craft my own items that then break within like 10 uses. I don't like any game that has armor or weapons that degrade. Fuck that. We're in modern days. I don't have time for that shit.
Mm-hmm.
That's my biggest complaint. That and there's no friggin' story.
I don't know. I didn't get far enough to experience it, but it didn't wow me.
There's no dungeons. It's go through an area, level up your hearts, solve the puzzle of that monument, move on to the next area. Solve the puzzle of the monument, move on to the next area. Solve the puzzle of the monument, move on to the next area. Solve the puzzle of the monument. It was Zelda the tech demo. I feel like when they come out with the new sequel, they've been teased and everything. If it's more of the same, I'm just done with mainline Zelda. I'll wait till they go and remaster all the original games on the Switch, and I'll be happy with it.
Yeah. So the next game that disappointed me, and I didn't want it to, because I remember being excited. I worked my ass off to get a review copy, and I greased a few palms. Basically, I leaned on a few of my PR contacts, like, hey, man, you know how much of a fan I am. I have a tattoo of this franchise on my right arm. You might say I'm invested.
Oh boy. Here we go.
Mass Effect Andromeda. This is a game I wanted so dearly to love. And I tried.
Same. We this is the first review we did together. And
yeah.
When it's the only time I've played a game and had a depressive sinking feeling in my stomach, like I'm ashamed I played this. This is all there is. I was mad at myself for not liking it, but then I was like, wait, no, I shouldn't do that. This game is really poorly made.
My moment came when Mass Effect 3 came out. I raced to beat it. I had that game beat in 18 hours with all missions accomplished, everything. I did everything I possibly could. Mass Effect Andromeda took me over 80 hours to beat. And that's because I took long breaks. Because I didn't want to play it. I remember fighting the same bosses over and over again. Getting mad at that. The storyline was nothing new. It was boring. It was derivative. It didn't take any risks. And the characters are kind of cool. I do like some of the new characters, that being said. But I beat it. And I remember getting on a Skype call with you back when Skype was a thing. And saying, that's it. I don't care.
I played it and I was like, okay, I had an okay experience playing it. But I was like, wait, this is all there is? It felt like 80 hours to get to the plot, and then the plot ends.
Yeah, and it's nothing more than, I'm so powerful, you cannot comprehend what I'm going to do. And that's so twirly mustache.
We were playing Mass Effect, the next generation, the prequel game. Like, it was, the whole game was to set up the next trilogy that never ever ended up happening. And
yeah,
and it was there wasn't enough travel, there wasn't enough storyline, there wasn't enough dialogue, there wasn't enough anything. And then bad animation, fantastic ship animation, fantastic background animation, all the stuff that was done by BioWare Edmonton, like the main team, was great. Everything that was done in Texas and Montreal was terrible garbage. And the horrible facial animations that were done by whatever EA studio in Czechoslovakia or whatever they outsourced it to was just utter horse shit. But like, you could see like where all the effort went into the background animations and the ships and stuff and the particle effects. That was all great. And if you look at the credits, all that was done in Edmonton. Everything else was done somewhere else. Like, I have never seen a game that had like 15 studios work on it. And I'm like, well, that explains the problem.
Yeah, like there's a wonderful expose article on Kotaku talking about this. There's YouTube documented. There's actually a guy on YouTube. I can't remember. I think his name's like Ravik or something like that. And it's called Mass Effect Andromeda 2 years later. And it's like an hour-long documentary talking about it. And you just see
every
all
once
the
in a while,
problems.
they still put out a good article like that.
Yeah, like, hell. Okay, that just made me... this will be a very quick mention. Anthem. Didn't care from day one, and you spent money on it.
Here's the thing. I didn't spend money on it. It was all pre-order stuff, and I had traded in to get it. So all I did was lose out on something else I could have pre-ordered.
I told you it wasn't worth it. I told you.
Well, I said, I'll give it a try. Well, there wasn't a whole lot else I wanted to pre-order at the time.
That's fair.
And to be honest, this was the year where a lot more stuff was coming as far as review copy-wise for me. Mm-hmm. So this, like, basically the companies that we don't really get a lot of pre-orders from are EA and basically
more regionally Capcom.
Yeah. EA, Capcom, Konami, and Square Enix are the hardest ones to get stuff from. So I was like, okay, there's not really anything else coming up from those guys that I want right now, so I'll put it down on this. I did make the mistake of getting the $100 edition, though. I should have probably gone with the $80 and saved that $20 to, I don't know, wipe my ass.
Yeah, and there was a huge Kotaku article on this about all the problems BioWare had with Anthem, multiple design changes over the course of the game's life cycle and development, and now the roadmap evaporating. It's a fucking mess, and they're trying to revitalize it with Anthem 2.0 in the new year. I don't think it'll happen.
Okay, you got on my case. You're the guy that got Fallout 76.
To be fair, I did get that for review. However, I did pre-order the $250 edition because I wanted the helmet.
Yes, and did you get that cloth ass bag?
I did, actually, and that's a rarity, evidently. So if I ever sell my complete Fallout 76 game, I maybe got some money on me, but
we'll just say this. For us at TWIG, mistakes were made on both sides.
Mistakes were made, yes. I still can't believe they tried to pass off this canvas bag due to a shortage of materials. Motherfucker, go to hell.
What, shortage of materials? This isn't fucking silicone for microchips.
Superconductor chips. Yeah.
You know exactly. What I mean? Like this isn't the RAM shortage because a tanker overturned during a tsunami. This is like textiles that are available everywhere in the world. This is a shortage of materials, a shortage of you wanting to spend any money, motherfuckers.
Fucking so stupid. To also talk about some things that happened this decade, I guess. Well, the revitalization of the Star Wars franchise. I mean, the Disney deal happened early in this. We had The Force Awakens back in 2014. We had the Clone Wars still continuing. We had Star Wars Rebels, Resistance. We had The Last Jedi. We just finished The Rise of Skywalker, The Mandalorian. Star Wars is back, for better or for worse. And some properties better than others.
Even Star Trek, same deal.
Yeah, we had Star Trek Discovery. We had Star Trek Into Darkness. We had Star Trek Beyond. And Star Trek.
Picard, we got Picard coming in 3 weeks, 2 weeks?
Yeah, 2 weeks. So that's something to look forward to. And I never thought we'd see a continuation of that. So everything old is new again.
We had the eventual death and implosion of the X-Men franchise, which we wouldn't have seen coming because it was so strong, earlier in the decade.
Yeah, I mean, everybody thought things were great after X-Men Days of Future Past and Logan. But then we had X-Men Apocalypse, and then we had
Dark
X-Men
Phoenix.
Dark Phoenix.
And basically they caved in like a dying star.
Yeah. New Mutants getting pushed back a million times.
You want to talk about the decade? Yes, a couple of the movies started in 2008 or 2009, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe this decade has been insane.
Dominated. Absolutely a juggernaut that could not be stopped. Have there been some stumbling blocks? Yes, there have been some weaker parts, but as a whole, these movies are unstoppable.
We've had the rise of, even though Batman and Superman haven't done so well, the secondary characters in the DC universe have done fantastically well with great turnouts from Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Shazam of all things.
Yeah, I never would have expected the Shazam movie to be any good.
And
it was amazing.
And it's one of the best comic book movies out of all things.
I mean, Zachary Levi. Wow.
Yeah. and then, it's not just those. We've had the resurrections in the last 10 years of the action star, and it's not young people. You've got your Vin Diesel and you've got your Jason Statham, who's middle-aged now, but who would have thought that the biggest action stars of the last 10 years would be Keanu Reeves in his 50s and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Stallone in their 70s?
Yeah, we've had the Expendables movies. We have the John Wick movies.
Rocky.
We have a million Fast and Furious.
Rocky, Rambo, and Terminator. You wouldn't have thought that these would be still going, and whether or not they've done super bank at the box office, they've been critical hits for the most part.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's not just that. We've had the rise of the streaming network. As a yes, Netflix was around before that, but this decade has been basically the cable killer. because with Netflix showed that you didn't have to be a cable network to make a ton of money and also find ways to skirt being around censorship. They don't have to adhere to FCC laws for broadcast. So what do you end up with? Super high quality stuff like The Mandalorian. Do you think The Mandalorian would have ever existed on ABC?
Nope.
or even any cable channel that ABC or that Disney would own? No, this would only exist in the framework of a streaming network.
You also saw a lot of television shows take risks. I mean, look at Game of Thrones, look at Breaking Bad, look at The Walking Dead. Like, there's been so many cultural events. Like, people would gather around water coolers, so to speak, and be like, did you see what happened on Game of Thrones? Did you see what happened on Breaking Bad?
And if you look, in the prior decade, you really only had that twice. The
Sopranos and what else?
And the Friends finale. That's pretty much the only two that come to mind where people had to watch it. Whereas, this decade, we've had more than one. More than two for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've got that going for us. Gaming has moved forward. I don't know necessarily, what the state of the comic book industry is, except that they're basically being used as storyboards for all of the other media now. Same with like other media like toys and that. I don't know. You're probably more the toy guy, but has there been like
Hot Toys? Hot Toys has come out swinging. Like their photo realistic license characters. Like if you want Bruce Willis from G.I. Joe, you can have that. You want John Wick, you can have it. You want any Avenger? I almost had a little tiny Jeremy Renner a couple years ago. I was going to buy Hawkeye. So there is amazing leaps and bounds in the toy industry.
And at the same time,
we now have a life-size, or not life-size, we have Unicron coming, which got funded by Hasbro Labs.
Yeah, okay, that's the thing, the rise of crowdfunding in the last 10 years. But you also have the meteoric rise and guaranteed soon to be doomed very slow fall of the Funko company. Because they became like rabid, they're basically the Beanie Babies of the last 7-8 years. And some people are ravenous fans of them, and those people we call crazy. But it's going to have a small and eventual diminishing returns. Now, that being said, the toy market has gone largely the same as the board game and RPG market to crowdfunding. You can now literally have your individual fandoms pay to create the media that they want to use, which is something that never existed before.
Yeah. Like, there's so much that has happened this decade that I'm hopeful in some ways for the future. I hope we see a little bit less remakes in the future, because I was so surprised when this decade gave me remakes of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Okay. Remake of RoboCop. Blasphemy. Total Recall. Blasphemy. But I also see the remake that comes out like very soon of The Grudge. We're getting a remake of Candyman, and that looks cool.
Fantasy Island is having a good horror style movie. So like, if done right, it can be cool and interesting. So I don't know. I guess what are you looking forward to in the next few months? Like, not the whole year or the decade, but like, is there anything you're looking forward to like January, February?
Not really. March is going to be a big one. Final Fantasy Remake.
Yeah, very true.
Persona 5 Royal. In April, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis.
Yeah, and then we're going to have to see. I think, as the time we're recording this, just before like on New Year's Eve, there's a lot that we're going to find out in the next 2 to 3 weeks when either Nintendo does a direct or CES comes out, because there's talk that Sony might be showing their PS5 there. That's what the big rumor is, because they've been tweeting and hinting. They said something big coming CES, and it better not be some sort of TV. It's because it sounds like it's probably something to do with the console. I doubt that they're going to do like a huge show of it, but don't be surprised if they just have it behind glass or something. So we'll find out from there. Yeah, you're right. Like, it's
Cyberpunk.
That's what I was going to say. I was waiting for you to say that. Cyberpunk. A lot of the stuff we're looking at is Q2 of the year. Q1 is sort of up in the air. I do know, like, I want to go see the Bad Boys for Life movie, and I want to see Bloodshot. I was going to say Bloodsport. I'll see Bloodsport whenever I want on TV. But there's a few things I want to see in January, February, but this year it's a little light compared to previous years.
I think we're all tired from Avengers Endgame and Star Wars and everything else. We need a little while to breathe.
But yeah, April onward, it's going to be like March onward, it's nonstop.
Yeah, next year's going to hurt the wallet real bad.
So I think that's probably going to do it for the show, right? Like,
that's pretty much.
Say Happy New Year, drive safe, don't be stupid on the road, be good to each other, whatever. You lead us out, buddy.
Of course. So hopefully the last decade has been good to you. Hope you've experienced some personal growth. And if you haven't, it's not the end of the world, because look at me, for example. This past decade, I've been involved in some great media projects, but I also got married. I had my life changed by my amputation, but it didn't stop me. I've lost a lot of friends. I've gained a lot of friends. I've learned the value of friendship. I've learned the depth of family. I've learned the loss of family. So whatever lessons you've learned, take them to heart. Understand they can and will make you a better person if you're willing to listen to what the universe is trying to tell you. So may the next decade be good to you, be good to each other. And until next time, we have been
Alex, and I couldn't have said anything like that better myself, buddy.
So
we genuinely love the fans and everybody around. So, all we can hope for is good things come 2020.
Exactly. And thank you for sticking with us since 2007. And here's to 10 more years. So until next time, we have been
Alex.
I've been Mike the Birdman Dodd, saying live free or die hard. And as my friend Jackie Bam Bam might say, be cool, be kind, be careful. We'll catch you again real soon with our regular show back on January 12th, right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Well, that's our show.
All right, here's the deal. Every time you watch my show, I will send you $40.
Checks will not be honored.
You've been listening to This Week in Geek, your source for guaranteed nonsense or your money back. Tune in next week for more info on the most important things you didn't need to know. Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net and subscribe to our podcast through iTunes or any podcatcher. If you'd like to comment on this episode, head over to this episode's post at ThisWeekInGeek.net and leave a comment through Facebook Connect. Follow us on Twitter at ThisWeekInGeek.net and follow our Instagram at twig_official_podcast. Social media not your thing? Send us an email at feedback@ThisWeekInGeek.net. We'll see you next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
Just when you think this show is terrible, something wonderful happens.
What?
It ends.
I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening.
Some other time, pal. There won't be any other time. The world is going to end at midnight tonight. Y2K. Y2K. Haven't you heard? At midnight, every computer in the world is going to fail. Planes will fall out of the sky, and all the world's nuclear weapons will explode, annihilating the entire planet.
No! Silly rabbit, tricks are for kids.
10, 9, 8.
This is it.
6, 5, 4.
Hold on tight.
1. Happy New Year!
A flautist, Peter.
Well, I hope you're happy. Come on, kids, we can still make the party if we...
Nice work, Lieutenant. Very festive.
Actually, sir, each of those lights represents a missile launching by itself. The pattern is just a coincidence.
Holy crap! Anybody else feel that?